This week's episode is sponsored by the psychological horror nightmare, Return to Silent Hill. When a mysterious letter draws James back to Silent Hill, he finds a town consumed by a terrifying fog. As he searches for the woman he once loved, the streets begin to warp around him, filled with monstrous creatures, impossible visions, and a horrifying revelation that he may not survive. Based on the legendary Silent Hill 2 and directed by Christoph Gans, Return to Silent Hill blends haunting psychological horror with surreal, nightmarish imagery that fans of the franchise know all too well. Some truths should stay buried in the fog. Watch now on Screambox.
Welcome to Horror Bytes on Safe Room, the show where we discuss the smaller scares and teenier terrors available to play on your gaming devices. From 5-minute prototypes to tantalizing demos and ambitious small-scale games, Horror Bytes aims to celebrate all kinds of terrifying micro-monsters in the indie horror gaming space, with 2 games in each episode picked for a particular theme. I am your host, Neil Bolt, and joining me as ever in this endeavour is Mr. Jay Krieger. How are you doing, Jay?
Good, man. Back after a bit of a break, just because, some scheduling stuff. We missed the last, 2 release windows for Horror Bytes, but I'm happy to be here screaming into the void about these with you once again.
Yes, a combination of scheduling and internet issues have kept us away, but we are back to doing it after a long time, unfortunately, especially for Horror Bytes, which we were already slightly behind on. But hey, we're here now. And we are indeed back with the second episode of our latest theme, which I have brought space, or space, as I put it at the original time. The theme means, of course, we can pick from all manner of space-going small horror games, concepts, game jams, and, the like. Anything with that cosmic flavour. And for this episode, Jay gets cosmic in his horror. So please, Jay, tell us about Cosmic Voyager.
Yeah, so this is from developer Floof Hips, which again, for keeping that running list of unforgettable developer names or developer collective names that's going on there as well. But I think with a lot of the Horror Bytes that we pick, more often than not, they end up being first person, which is not a bad thing, but I have found that sometimes, they end up being almost a bit predictable in terms of what to expect in terms of like the scares or the structure of it, just because of the utilization of first person is so common in terms of like stuff that we see on, Itch.io and whatnot. And so I decided to go with Cosmic Voyager, which is going through as part of a space station crew. It's a week in the life on that ship and working with that crew. And you're basically orbiting this star. Now, things get pretty weird pretty quickly, which is just how we like our Horror Bytes, short and sweet. But I specifically picked this one for its cosmic horror themes. Rather than this being, the type of Horror Byte that basically uses the setting of space to basically just like explain away these dark corridors that you'll be wandering down. Like, I found that Cosmic Voyager did a very good job of like utilizing the setting of space and, more importantly, taking things in a less traditional route, if you will. It's less about something stalking you in the hallways, which is fine. That's certainly worked in the past, but I was really looking for something that was able to facilitate the isolation and the feeling of actually being a member of a crew. Like, what are you doing? I don't want to hear that you're the maintenance person. I actually want to like live that life if that's going to be the sort of role that the player is supposed to be facilitating. So I found that this did a good job of like establishing that sense of space, establishing, the character that you're playing and their role. There's a couple of like puzzles early on that you have to basically work on various systems on the ship to ensure that the station, stays in orbit, as it were. But then things take a turn that I think I would say is like more akin to the realm of like Solaris rather than, some other type of space horror that is more like monster focused, if you will. And I just found that like in the back half when things get pretty cosmic and to a degree like psychedelic, It just had a really good understanding, I think, of utilizing the isolation of space, but at the same time, like skirting around the usual, I don't know, like visual tropes of what to expect in space. There's no tentacle monsters, there's no, little green men, as it were, but there is a good use of like presenting the unfathomable to players within the context of space and, the all sort of encompassing nature of space being this thing that reminds humanity that you think you've come a long way, but you really don't understand anything. I think that this does that well enough in terms of like when things truly get bizarre in the cosmos. But what did you think of Cosmic Voyager?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's going in a nicely different sort of path. I think both
Mm,
games, actually, this episode kind of had similar ideas in terms of like going for like menial work in
mm,
space and
mhm,
like giving you that sort of connection that way and telling the story of a character that way, and then giving you something seemingly impossible and alien in a way that we don't normally get, like, which is great. Like, it's kind of trading off on the same ideas of like the deep ocean, the idea of like
mm.
what could be down there, like that, again, which cosmic horrors often deal with that anyway. So in either way, so yeah, it's like a really cool sort of theme with that, like the sort of structure of repetition you get in doing jobs aboard the space station as well.
Mm.
Like, yeah, again, we've seen that happen in a lot of small scale horror games, and it works. Like, it's the isolation, it's the sense of something is going to happen, but what will it be?
Mm.
And like I say, rather than trading off in like building up for some great big jump scare, it's like it is just ends up being the sense of dread that kind of gets fulfilled in a very different way. And yeah, I did quite like that it was not the expected route. I mean, there's always a chance, yeah, when you're playing
Mm.
so many games like this where you think you know where it's going to go, and you don't want it to. Like, you don't want it to be predictable
Right.
because then you kind of have to hope that the execution is great, and you could say that at least. But
Mm.
yeah, when something is a bit more, a bit more I suppose expanded, and of a bigger idea of what could be out there in space and something beyond us and beyond
Mm.
simple like one to one, like this is a being that's the same size as you and the same kind of just different planet, whatever, or like some parasitic organism or whatever. It's like, yeah, something that is akin to the idea of why we would go out there in the first place, like
Yeah.
what sort of, yeah, what is our place in this world, sort of thing. And yeah, I like that about it a lot.
Yeah, we very rarely see the unknowingness of space being used in a horror context outside of kind of the, general ways that I'd mentioned where, you've got tentacle monsters or some type of like alienoid being. So I think the notion that you could terrify by, dancing around something that even though you show it at the end, you still aren't really able to kind of like fully understand what it is. I think that that was just like a really strong use of, again, like the setting of space and something that I hope we see more of in the future. Just something that is, again, like challenging to humanity's notion of where they're at in the world, but also presenting it in a manner that is not as um, sort of like foundational within the subgenre.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a good way to kick us back off, I'd say that was. But we will be back in the cockpit with our second pick right after this. And welcome back. For my pick, Black Foam's Helion 5 sees us descend onto Mars, where we're investigating a planet-sized anomaly that has appeared without warning, as I want to do. Once there, we discover that there's something far worse, surprise, surprise, waiting below the surface. This game takes about 30 minutes to finish, again, first-person sort of perspective, as it was with the first game. And, again, based on very much doing menial tasks in terms of your exploration, but a bit more open, I suppose, in terms of as you sort of go across the surface. I mean, it's quite deliberately plodding outside generally with the menial tasks sort of in there as you investigate, but you can move faster in certain areas and certain pathways as well. And yeah, there's just a lot of silence to it as well. Like there's little stabs to things, but the main things you hear are your own heavy footsteps, which are still muffled by the sound of being in a suit. Yeah, space logic in like entertainment. But you get the whooshing doors and all the beeps and boops, and they're very like standard noises, but they do kind of add to this, like as we just said with your pick as well, a looming sense of dread, where
Right.
you're just waiting for what's going to happen. And again, when the something comes into it, it's like presented in a way that was kind of unexpected, and leaves you feeling quite small as well in a great way, which I like that, and that sort of results in this really sort of bleak, strange ending to this thing, which is again like very fitting for what it is. Not entirely sure the structure's great in terms of like doing the sort of menial work stuff. Like there's a lot of just walking around great distances for the sake of walking around great distances. The atmosphere works for it, ironically, for a lot of it, where you do just feel that sort of impending sense of something is going to happen, but it maybe gets played out a bit too much in terms of having all these big sort of long runs of doing things and kind of feels frustrating to sort of travel all this way to each place. But the idea behind it is solid, and I think they do sort of keep that sort of idea up going well and pull it off pretty well in terms of the ending. But yeah, that's how I felt about it. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I appreciated this one from the outset, it being a bit more of a understated horror in the terms of just like you'd said, you go through the sort of like routine, mundane aspects of exploring and whatnot. It made it feel a bit like, was it Ridley Scott's The Martian in that regard up front, where, it's less about the horrors of your current situation and more about like uncovering in the film it was Ways to Survive. Here it's uncovering what is beneath the surface of this planet and whatnot. And so I think for me, like the understanding more about the mystery and having sort of like free reign to pursue that on the planet, and sort of like again going to the sublevels and whatnot, kind of just it made it feel more like an adventure kind of game for me, which I was a fan of. And the fact that like basically, you're going to get to the more horrifying discoveries and whatnot, the further that you are able to prolong your survival on this planet. But I just appreciated the fact that, like, as we've chatted about plenty of times in the past, like taking survival elements and then applying it to something that maybe we haven't seen quite to this degree, just made this one that, as you said, can be plotting at times, but I think that overall, like, it does a good job of kind of utilizing that setting and at least making you feel like you are this cosmonaut that is trying to uncover something. And that like sense of wonder and mystery is something that I think really helps this one be just a peg above maybe some of the aimlessness of it at times,
Yeah.
perhaps.
I think it's because as well, like with the visual style of it and how it makes it look like there's a lot more space to traverse than there actually is.
Yeah.
That kind of plays into it as well. And again, that is a very deliberate point to it. It is trying to sort of give you this idea of this vast alien space, where you are just feeling that you're too open, everything's too wide, and then when you're indoors, it feels a bit too claustrophobic. It's like that's really effective, like I say, in general. But I do think it kind of just shows through after a while that you need to. Okay, we maybe cut a little bit here and get to the point a little quicker, but yeah, I mean, it's always going to be an issue with a small game where you are not having anything to kind of fill the silence. And while I don't think the game needs to necessarily, it's just like you kind of feel the absence of something in it, which is again, like I say, I think is a choice that's made very deliberately. And whether you get on with that or not is down to the individual. But I think it's not done without thought and care.
Yeah, these types of games are ones that I really appreciate mechanically speaking and like the sense of atmosphere, but I do need something to compel me to stick. Granted, this is a horror bite, right? So this was not an issue. This was a 30-minute experience, but this kind of made me think a little bit and it's not a one-to-one type of a thing, but like a game such as Subnautica, right, where you're exploring this essentially alien place, and you have this tool set that you're utilizing because you essentially want to like uncover perhaps the mystery behind this location and whatnot. But personally, I just need a bit more narrative. So like if this was a longer type of experience, I would need that narrative hook to have me really invested in it in a way that I don't have to be. And I'm not going to fault this game for not having that, because again, it's 30 minutes at most. But if this was the type of thing that could be expanded, that's what I would need to like have that hook be a bit more prevalent, if you will.
Yeah, I think the key thing to take away though is it's distinct in it's what
Yes.
it's doing. It's just it's a very clear vision of what someone's doing. It just that's always going to have polarizing issues. Whatever that's art for you. But yeah, that is it. You can, as ever, find a link to the games we've featured in this episode in the description. But that is all we have for this week. So again, thank you, Jay, for talking about these short horror games with me. And of course, if you, the listener, do have a short horror game, a demo, a game jam entry, or a proof of concept that you think we should be highlighting, or maybe you just wish to suggest a theme for the episode, Jay here will show you how.
Yeah, so you can reach out to us at email saferoompod@gmail.com for those suggestions, and whether it be theme or games. And then, of course, on all of our social media platforms, you can follow us at Safe Room Pod.
Thank you. We will be back with a new theme in the next episode, which will hopefully be in 2 weeks this time, all being well. But until then, we will keep searching for more horror bites.